"Dad, she hasn't eaten," the boy whispered. Then the single dad walked toward the struggling mother and daughter. The little boy noticed the girl before anyone else did. She was sitting beside her mother on a cold bench outside a nearly empty grocery store, her tiny hands folded tightly over her stomach while she watched other families carry bags of food toward their cars. Her mother kept pretending everything was fine, rubbing the girl's shoulders and forcing a weak smile, but the girl had grown too tired to pretend. As the single father and his young son walked past, the boy suddenly stopped, looked at his father with frightened eyes, and whispered, "Dad, she hasn't eaten." His father followed his son's gaze and saw the mother quietly turning away so her daughter would not see the tears running down her face. What happened next would change all four of their lives. Before we continue, if you believe kindness still matters, that people deserve second chances, and one small act can change someone's entire life, please like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to SoulTales. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories of kindness, courage, and second chances. Daniel had learned not to judge people by what they carried in their hands. Sometimes the people carrying nothing were carrying the heaviest burdens. At 36, he was raising his 8-year-old son, Noah, alone. Their life was not easy. Daniel worked long hours repairing appliances at a small service shop across town, and after rent, electricity, groceries, school expenses, and the occasional unexpected bill, there was rarely anything left. He had become skilled at stretching a small amount of money across an entire week. He knew which supermarket discounted bread in the evening, which bus route saved them 20 minutes, and how to make one roasted chicken become 3 different meals. Still, Daniel considered himself lucky because every night Noah climbed into his bed, hugged him tightly, and reminded him that they were a family. That afternoon, Daniel had taken Noah to the grocery store with exactly enough money to buy milk, bread, eggs, and a small package of chicken. Noah had been asking for a chocolate bar, but Daniel had gently explained that they needed to stay within their budget. Noah had accepted it without complaining. As they stepped outside, however, the boy noticed the mother and daughter sitting near the side entrance. The mother looked exhausted. Her coat was thin despite the cold weather, and her shoes were worn down at the heels. Beside her sat a little girl who looked around Noah's age, but unlike him, she had no energy to complain about anything. She simply stared at the grocery bags passing by. Daniel initially assumed they were waiting for someone. He continued walking until Noah's words stopped him. He looked at his son and then at the 2 strangers. The mother immediately lowered her eyes when she realized they had been noticed. She reached into her empty handbag as though searching for something, then pulled out a folded receipt and pretended to examine it. Daniel understood the truth without needing an explanation. He looked down at the grocery bag in his hand. There was enough food for their family to eat that evening and perhaps part of the next day. He could hear his own worries reminding him that money was tight, that the car needed repairs, and that his electricity bill was due in 3 days. But then he looked at the little girl again. Noah was watching him carefully. Daniel knew his son was waiting to see what his father would do. Daniel walked toward the woman and asked if she and her daughter were all right. The woman quickly nodded, embarrassed by the question. She said they were fine and thanked him for asking. Daniel did not challenge her pride. Instead, he opened the grocery bag and handed her the bread and eggs. The woman stared at him as if he had placed something priceless in her hands. She tried to refuse, but Daniel gently insisted. He then gave her the milk and chicken too, keeping only the small package of cookies Noah had chosen earlier. The woman finally broke down. She explained that her name was Maria and her daughter's name was Lily. She had lost her job several months earlier after the small cleaning company where she worked closed unexpectedly. She had searched everywhere, but every employer seemed to want experience, transportation, or flexible hours she could not provide because Lily needed to be picked up from school. Her apartment rent was already several weeks behind, and that morning she had realized there was nothing left in the kitchen. She had brought Lily to the grocery store hoping she could find some temporary work or perhaps ask for help, but shame had kept her frozen on that bench. Daniel listened quietly. He recognized something in Maria that he had seen in his own reflection during the hardest years of his life. It was not laziness. It was exhaustion. It was the feeling of being responsible for someone you loved while having no idea how you would make tomorrow work. Daniel did not simply hand her food and walk away. He asked where she lived and whether she had a safe place to stay that night. Maria hesitated before telling him about the small apartment she shared with Lily. Daniel promised nothing he could not afford, but he told her he would help her find a way forward. That evening, he contacted the manager of the repair shop where he worked and asked whether they needed someone for cleaning and basic office work. The manager said they did not have a position open, but he knew a nearby business that did. The next morning, Daniel gave Maria the address. She arrived early with Lily beside her, wearing the cleanest clothes she had. She was offered a temporary cleaning position, 3 days a week, with the possibility of more hours. It was not a miracle that solved everything, but it was a beginning. For the first time in months, Maria walked home carrying something more valuable than groceries. She carried hope. But Daniel's kindness did not end there. A week later, he learned that Maria's apartment landlord had given her a final notice. Daniel could not pay her rent, and he knew he could not become responsible for every problem she faced. Instead, he helped her apply for local assistance, connected her with a community center, and asked the repair shop manager whether Maria could take additional shifts. Several people became involved, each contributing something small. One person offered winter clothes for Lily. Another donated school supplies. Someone else provided a used bicycle so Maria could get to work. Noah watched all of this happen. One evening, while he and his father were eating dinner, he asked Daniel why they helped Maria when they did not have much themselves. Daniel looked at his son and explained that kindness was not about being rich enough to solve every problem. Sometimes kindness meant noticing someone else's pain and refusing to walk past it. Months passed. Maria worked harder than anyone expected. She eventually became a full-time employee and started saving money. Lily grew healthier, happier, and more confident. She and Noah became close friends, often doing homework together while their parents worked nearby. The family that had once been sitting outside a grocery store with an empty stomach slowly rebuilt itself. Then one rainy evening, Daniel received a phone call from the repair shop. His boss told him that the company was expanding and wanted him to supervise a new team. It meant more responsibility, but it also meant a significant raise. Daniel sat silently after hearing the news. For years, he had felt like he was always one emergency away from losing everything. Now, for the first time, he could breathe. A few days later, Maria arrived at Daniel's home carrying a small paper bag. Inside was a homemade cake. She told him that she had received her first full paycheck and wanted to celebrate the person who had helped her family when they had nothing. Daniel tried to tell her she owed him nothing, but Maria shook her head. She explained that what he gave her that day was not simply food. He had given her the courage to believe that her daughter could have a future. Daniel looked toward Lily and Noah, who were laughing together in the living room, and realized something he had never expected. His son had been the one who noticed a hungry child, but that moment had taught Daniel something too. Sometimes children see what adults become too busy or afraid to notice. Years later, Lily would still remember that cold afternoon outside the grocery store. She would remember the hunger, the embarrassment, and the moment a stranger walked toward her instead of walking away. But most importantly, she would remember that someone had seen her when she felt invisible. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists, and subscribe to SoulTales for more stories about compassion, family, and second chances. And before we end, leave a comment saying, kindness can change a life, if you believe one small act of compassion can become the beginning of someone's new life. Because Daniel never became a millionaire, never solved every problem in his community, and never considered himself a hero. He simply listened when his son whispered that a little girl was hungry. And sometimes, that is all it takes. One person notices. One person stops. One person chooses compassion over convenience. The food Daniel gave that day lasted only a few meals, but the hope he gave Maria and Lily lasted for years. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. You may not be able to change the whole world, but you can change someone's world by refusing to walk away.